And my apology for just coming in without having being acknowledged, but I appreciate that you've given me the opportunity.
Indulgence is granted.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to check the implications of discussing this matter, the first item, with our colleagues from the IEC here present here, if it does not have any negative impact. If it doesn't have any negative impact, then I'm comfortable, Chair. We can proceed with the first item with them here in present here to this meeting. I just wanted us to check that, Chair. But if it doesn't have any negative bearing and results, it's fine. We can proceed, Chairperson. Thank you. But with your guidance, of course.
Thank you very much, DP. You know, a committee of parliament, it's for the public. And for today's meeting, as I said earlier, I was advised that these proceedings are beamed live on Parliament channel. So whether they were right inside the meeting or they were watching on TV, they will still be privy to whatever is happening. But in view of the fact that they are administering item 2, they must stay put so that when we're done with item 1, we're able to do item 2 swiftly. We will, however, after this item, grant indulgence to the minister, deputy minister, and the acting DG, if they so wish, to leave the meeting because the matter does not necessarily directly deal with them. But for purposes of information, they may remain because these issues at a regulatory level, it is also being dealt with by the Minister of Home Affairs. So I think everything is in order, Honorable Mwala. At this point, we can proceed with them in the meeting because this is a public meeting. Thank you very much. Over to you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Accepted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, Advocate Bongo. Let me also greet the chairperson of the IEC, Redland Mashinini, because I can see him on the screen, and greet all the members of the Portfolio Committee, the members of the media who might have logged in, and members of the public. As you already said, this discussion today is being aired live, and so South Africans are watching. Let me also greet them. Chairperson, right from the start, I wish to mention why I did not present you with a written presentation as we normally do, as is normally the practice. Number one is the shortness of the period of notice. I was only told yesterday when I was in lots of meetings. But number two, and most important, the matter of Bushiri, Chairperson, is not solely a matter of Home Affairs, as many people have been saying ever since the saga began. The whole security cluster, the JCPS cluster, justice, crime prevention, and security cluster are involved in it, which means it's the Home Affairs Department, the Department of Justice, South African Police Services, together with their branch, the Hawks, the Minister of State Security, the Minister of Defense, and the Minister of International Development and Cooperation, DERCO. All those clusters and ministers are involved in this matter of Bushiri. So any report that will come to Parliament will come through that cluster. And coincidentally, for the whole morning yesterday, the ministers of the cluster met, and they also met with their technical teams. And they are going to prepare a comprehensive report that involves everybody. That is the one that will come to Parliament and also to this committee. What I'm going to do this morning is just to outline the role of Home Affairs in this whole thing. I would like to start by saying, Chairperson, we got involved in this matter of Bushiri. Sometimes last year, when the Hawks were investigating cases of criminality, fraud, corruption, and money laundering. In the course of that investigation, the Hawks came across identity documents that were problematic to them, that had lots of inconsistencies. They then handed them over to Home Affairs to say, we are investigating these crimes, but the issues of identity and identity documents is a purview of Home Affairs Department, and we won't be able to interpret them. Please take over. Home Affairs then went in to find out exactly what's going on about the documentation of the officials. Then they found that let me give you the instrument which we use. Home Affairs has got an electronic movement control system in our ports of entry. That means a system which shows the ins and outs of people into the Republic. That means when you enter the Republic and when you exit, it is recorded on the movement control system. Members of Parliament and the Portfolio Committee might remember that when COVID-19 struck, we closed 35 border posts. One of the reasons of closing them is that they don't have movement control system. They are not sophisticated. So we're left with only 18 border posts that can control the movement control system. So when we want to check the ins and outs of a human being or any person in and out of the Republic of South Africa, we go to the movement control system. The movement control system shows that Miss Mary Bushiri entered South Africa through OR International Airport, OR Tambo International Airport, and produced a permanent residence permit, which she claimed was issued to her in 1997. That is just 3 years after democracy. Now, obviously, this is surprising because people don't just get permanent residence permits when they enter the country for the first time. But anyway, she produced it and said, no, it was given to her in 1997. On our movement control system, we do not have any records of her entering the country in 1997. Then, in movement control system shows that further, that Mr. Bushiri himself entered South Africa around about 2009. Other records of immigration are indicating 2009, but the real movement control system indicates 2013. So we'll take 2013 as authentic because it's recorded officially on the movement control system, not on an investigation. In 2014, 2015, 2016, Mr. Shepherd Bushiri registered companies with a CIPD and started conducting business. This is important to mention because at this juncture, I should inform the committee and the public that at this juncture, Mr. Bushiri should then have applied for a business visa as is demanded by the law, but he never did so, meaning that the businesses that he was running were not within the law. Then, Chairperson, in 2016, the Bushiris applied for permanent residence permit, meaning the fact that Ms. Bushiri had already produced a permanent residence permit in 2012. For some reason, she was no longer recognizing it, or she forgot. She applied together with Mr. Shepherd Bushiri for permanent residence permits in 2016. And they declared under oath that they entered South Africa for the first time in 2015. I've already informed you our movement control system shows otherwise. They were granted this permanent residence permit in 2016, which I must state was issued irregularly because there was misrepresentation of facts. I've already told you about some of the facts. And this matter is being investigated in terms of which Home Affairs officials were responsible and under what conditions. So having discovered all this, we reached a conclusion that the stay of Mr. and Ms. Bushiri inside South Africa is not regular. It is through lots and lots of anomalies. And so we need to take back or revoke their permanent residence status. On the 2nd of August, a notice was issued, 2nd of August this year. Home Affairs issued a notice asking Mr. Bushiri to provide reasons why their permanent residence permit should not be withdrawn. This is a normal procedure, Chairperson. It's the same procedure as when you suspend a person in the public service. You write them a notice and say they must show a cause why they should not be suspended. So we actually wrote to Bushiri using the same principle to show a cause why their permanent residence documents should not be revoked. At this time when we're issuing this notice, you'll be aware that Bushiri had already been arrested for the first time because he was arrested twice. And the court appearance was set for May 2021. So when we issued the notice to them, the Bushiris rushed to court, took Home Affairs to court, and asked the court to stop Home Affairs from asking them questions because they argued that they've got a criminal case to plead in court. And if they start answering questions before they are pleading in court, they might incriminate themselves. So they were asking the court to tell Home Affairs to back off. Unfortunately, the court did suspend our impending action. They did not stop it. They did not throw it out. They suspended it because the ruling was that Home Affairs, please wait with your intended actions until Mr. Bushiri pleads in court in May 2021. Of course, Chairperson and members of the committee, we were very upset by this ruling because we regarded the criminal cases which the Hawks have with Mr. Bushiri as not having to interfere with the processes in Home Affairs. So the very following day after this court ruling, Home Affairs applied for leave to appeal. Chairperson, when you opened this meeting, you mentioned Mr. Muela raising the issue of Home Affairs and Bushiri. This is the issue he was raising because members of the committee saw it on TV for the first time. I was responding to the media because the media had an impression that Home Affairs lost a case against Mr. Bushiri, and that's what they were asking us. And I had to clarify it with them that no, we did not lose the case. The court has just suspended our action until Mr. Bushiri pleads. And if he pleads, we will go on with our action of revoking his permanent residence documents. Unfortunately, the court has put it in abeyance and we can't move. But that's not the same as losing a case. But anyway, we applied immediately for leave to appeal because we did not believe that this was a proper ruling. This leave to appeal was had on Friday, coincidentally, the day on which all these dramas that are now all over South Africa are taking place. On the day on which the president of Malawi was here, we were in court where the judge was hearing our application for appeal, to appeal that judgment. And of course, the matter was heard and judgment has been reserved. Of course, up to today, we're waiting for that judgment. But during that period, you are aware, Mr. Bushiri got arrested for the second time by the Hawks. And he started applying for bail, the very famous bail application that took 2 weeks. Our role, Chairperson, in this bail hearing of Mr. Bushiri was to provide police with information about the irregular and fraudulent documents that Mr. Bushiri uses. And we emphasize the fact that because all the documents from Home Affairs that Mr. Bushiri has been using are irregular, we regard him as a flight risk who should not be granted bail. Chairperson, I must confess, our worries stem from the fact that of a fact that is well known. It is common cause, Chairperson, that we are suffering porous borders in this country. And the Department of Home Affairs have been working around the clock to deal with these issues, to an extent where the department went to Parliament a decade ago to ask Parliament to pass a Border Management Authority Act to try and deal with our porous borders. It is again common cause that Parliament took more than about 10 years to finalize that bill, which was passed on the last day Parliament rose for COVID-19. Disaster regulations. So we are still engaged with the President about signing of proclamation, signing of assent, which has already taken place, signing of proclamation, and the transfer of functions from some ministries to Home Affairs. We are still busy with that. And during this moment, obviously, our borders remain porous. We cannot hide that. That's why we're very anxious about Bushiri being given bail, because we believe people who are a flight risk can go through any of our porous borders where we will not be able to see them. That was our worry, and we presented this information to police, which they duly presented to court. Unfortunately, they were not successful. As is well known, the court granted 200,000 rand bail each and instructed the Bushiris to report to the nearest police station on Mondays and Fridays between 6 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the evening, or 6 hours 00 and 18 hours 00. At this juncture, Chairperson, Home Affairs had no longer had any contact with Bushiri. In other words, at this juncture, we gave over to the police because by virtue of the bail conditions, it is the police that then took responsibility for him. So Bushiri has never been under any supervision of the Home Affairs at any stage. Now, the presidential visit, because people are of course relating this escape with the presidential visit. The president of Malawi paid a long-planned visit to the Republic of South Africa on the 13th of November. As I said, this is the very day on which we were in court pleading for appeal that we want the court to allow us to confiscate our documents from Mr. Bushiri. So the president has requested that. As a minister in cabinet, I knew as far back as August this year that the president of Malawi has requested for a visit to the president of South Africa and is waiting for the date. I also know as a fact that this date of the 13th was chosen by the presidency and DECO. It's not the president of Malawi who decided on what day they could come. The date was provided by the Republic of South Africa. The president then arrived on the 13th at Waterkloof Air Force Base with an entourage of 23 people. Now, after the visit, the entourage obviously went to Waterkloof Air Force Base to board the flight back home. The acting director general of Home Affairs, Mr. J.K. McKay, was requested by Minister of DECO, Dr. Naledi Pandor, to rush to Waterkloof Air Force Base, and the reason being that somebody from Malawi has made a request to Minister of DECO that there was an advanced team from Malawi who wants to depart with the minister, with the president chair. but they came from the president as an advice team and landed in OR Tambo International Airport. Now they wanted to leave through Waterkloof. The Minister of DECO declined and said, no, it's not allowed. Waterkloof Air Force Base, as you know, and there have been controversies, is specifically for heads of states and other dignitaries, not ministers. So unless a minister is an envoy of a president. So they were told that, no, it can't happen. Only the president and the first lady and the entourage they came with can live through Waterkloof. So Dr. Naledi Pandor asked Acting Director General Mr. McKay to make sure that no mistakes happens. He did so. And when he arrived at the airport, he found Deputy Minister Candice Mashiro Dlamini, who was there to represent Minister Pandor to see the president off as his normal protocol. Deputy Minister was already discussing with the Malawians about this issue of Waterkloof, that the advanced team cannot leave from there. Mr. McKay joined her and told them that there's no way that the advanced team can rest there. I read from the media that the presidential entourage, the president of Malawi, was held in Waterkloof base, and it's not, in terms of protocol, is very bad. He was treated badly. The president was not there at Waterkloof. Presidents don't just rush to Waterkloof to wait. They wait until everybody is in the flight. Then they are called from the presidential guest house or from the hotel where they are to go to Waterkloof, which is what happened. So the arguments about people having to go to having not being allowed to board at Waterkloof was taking place between Acting Director General Mr. McKay, Deputy Minister Mashiro Dlamini, and the entourage from Malawi, by which time there were now 66, when we knew only 23 people, when we include the president and the deputy, meaning the entourage that accompanied the president officially, which was recorded in DERCO, was 21 people. The 23 mentioned is because you count the president and the first lady. But now there were 66, excluding the president and the first lady. Now it was suggested that the extra people must go to OR Tambo from where they landed in the first place. It is not Malawians, I repeat, who proposed that they must go to OR Tambo. It was a proposal from Mr. McKay. So that because it took a long time debating and negotiations, toing and froing, phoning the Minister of DECO to intervene and all that, it did take a long time for the presidential delegation to depart. And eventually, yes, the presidential delegation remained, and they were then ushered into the plane. But just before they were ushered, the South African police services, as represented by the Hawks, arrived. And by that time, it was already past 18 hours. And Mr. Bushiri and Mary Bushiri did not report to the police station as instructed by the court, as they normally do. And the police raised an alarm. It is then that they thought, because there is a delegation from Malawi, there's a possibility that they might take advantage of it. So they arrived at the airport to make sure that that mistake doesn't happen. And indeed, a meticulous process started, led by Mr. McKay, the Acting Director General, whereby each of the people who were there was scrutinized with their passport. The photo on the passport, their face, they were matched before they moved into the plane. This, of course, with the exception of the president and the first lady, they were moved into the plane. And after they went into the plane and the president and the first lady boarded, before the plane departed, it was searched by the police. And then the agreement, Chairperson, was the realization by Minister McKay that possibly the Malawian delegation came with single tickets with the belief that they will live with the president. And that's why perhaps they were arguing like that. So he gave them an offer that the presidential plane will be allowed to land on the tarmac of OR Tambo Airport to fetch them. But they must be processed through the normal processes at OR Tambo, like any other passenger. But of course, because they were ministers, they were offered the protocol launch. And so they were processed from the protocol, but the same procedure was followed. Passports were matched with the photos and the faces of the members who were there, and they went into the plane. But before the plane departed, it was definitely searched for the second time, having convinced themselves that there is no sign of Mr. and Mrs. Bushiri. The plane was allowed to depart. On Saturday, the 14th of November, we then heard that Mr. Bushiri has appeared or reappeared in Malawi. But Chairperson, I must mention that when the team was boarding at Waterkloof, one member who came with the team did not board on the 13th. He didn't. And according to our movement control system, he boarded the very following day and went to Malawi. But when the team that was at OR Tambo was boarding, 3 members did not board, and it's not indicated on our movement control system that they went through any border. We regard them still being South Africa. This to us was not a surprise. It happens all the time. Ever since I was in government, almost all the presidential delegations that come, they don't leave immediately because some people go shopping in Sandton, others have got relatives here, some even have got perhaps their holiday homes and all that. All those things are at play. So when people did not leave, we were not surprised. Yesterday, we tried to conduct the embassy. They don't have an ambassador there. It's a charge d'affaires. We conducted charge d'affaires to ask whether they know that 3 of their members did not live with the president. But I must emphasize, Chairperson, we don't regard this as abnormal. It has always happened that people remain, but in our movement control system, they've not left. So when we heard that Bushiri has left, we wanted to know what mechanism has she used, because, Chairperson, the Bushiris were instructed by the court to hand in their passports, their travel document. I must emphasize, Mr. Bushiri has 5 passports. None of them are South African. They were all issued in Malawi. We have got their passport numbers. Mrs. Bushiri has got 5 passports, all of them issued by Malawi, not issued by us. But then we consulted our movement control system. We requested it to show us the movement of these 2 people through our ports of entry. And our movement control system indicated that the last time the Bushiris went officially through any port of entry in South Africa was on the 19th of January 2019, when they entered South Africa through the OR Tambo International Airport. After the 19th of January 2019, there's no movement in our movement concept that indicates that any of the Bushiris went through any of our border posts. That includes on these days, on the whole of days of last week. It only reflects January last year. Of course, there are newspaper statements about them having gone into Lesotho by bribing a Home Affairs official. Obviously, when a Home Affairs official is bribed, it's not easy for us to know. At the same time, we do catch people who are bribed in Home Affairs, but it does not necessarily mean we catch them all the time. So I took liberty to check with Lesotho. Now, I want to mention, Chairperson, when any plane, any commercial aircraft, let me say, leaves Lesotho, it can only go to OR Tambo International Airport. When anybody is in Lesotho, they want to go to any part of the world, they can only do so by going through a port of entry into South Africa and out again. There's no other mechanism. So the only other mechanism a person may fly from Lesotho, apart from the ones I've mentioned, is through a chartered flight. I checked with my counterpart in Lesotho, and they checked with Lesotho International Airport. There were no chartered flight that landed on Maseri Airport for last week. The first flight that landed and is still there was bringing a team from Burundi, and it landed on Sunday, a day after all this saga happened. So the issue of Lesotho, we dismiss. So that's why, Chairperson, we issued a statement that the Bushiris did not live with the President of Malawi, neither did they go through our port of entry, neither did they produce any of the passports. I must also state the 5 passports that they've got, because of we have got their numbers, they will be caught on our movement control system if any one of them go out. Now, Chairperson, at this juncture, I wish to stop because the rest of the report of exactly what happened will come from the JCPS cluster, not from me. I should not purport to be speaking on behalf of the other clusters. I cannot do so. I was never mandated. I'm only telling my committee what the Home Affairs knows and what the Home Affairs Department has done. Thank you very much.